and we're going to talk about prodependence and related topics.
You might want to start with something else because we kind of have a tradition.
I see. I'm hurrying today. I forgot about Matt's socks. Matt doesn't like to wear shoes, and I always make him show off his socks. And this is now twice that I've forgotten, and he has reminded me both times. So thank you, Matt. You'll see the socks.
Yeah, we've got people already like jumping in there, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Four chats reminding us about the socks.
I don't know that to be honest, the people watching on YouTube later, I don't know that they ever, like, sometimes they probably don't see the socks.
So yeah, you probably don't usually hit record until after we've done the socks.
So these ones are intriguing. Maybe not super intriguing, but like, I want to know what your first thought is when I show you these.
Those are palm trees?
Correct. They're palm trees. And somebody said to me today, they're like Halloween palm trees.
Well, I thought maybe they could also be like spiders too. But I don't know what's sticking out of the spider.
The stalks are like Halloween orange and like black palm trees. And I honestly have no idea where I got them, but this is the first time I've worn them because I was like, I just want a fresh pair to wear today. So these were an interesting addition to my wardrobe.
You're gonna have to break them out every Halloween now.
Maybe actually, these might become my quasi Halloween socks.
There we go.
Okay, so last time you and I talked, we jumped into, I think, boundaries, right? And it was a fun one.
Yeah.
And I am more than happy to go back and talk about boundaries. Some of the things that stood out to me, I think every time I talk to people about boundaries, is this understanding that boundaries, the healthiest relationship we'll ever have will have the most boundaries. So we can totally revisit that. I had an epiphany come up to me the other day. I've been doing some really fun work with some of my advanced trauma groups. I've got a men's group, I've got a women's group. And one of the things that I've been doing is really working on helping them learn to lean in to their partner's distress. So when they're in a moment of conflict, which again, many of you have heard me say, conflict is like, you might be conflict averse, conflict might be very scary to you, but conflict has the opportunity for repair, and attachment in our relationships are born out of the repair of conflict. I've talked about this many times. And so we start to get to a place where we realize if we have conflict together, it's an opportunity for us to gain connection. It's an opportunity for us to gain trust and closeness. And so once I have somebody that's in a pretty good place in recovery, I really work hard to try and teach them to securely lean into that conflict. And I made a statement the other day that I'm trying to figure out if it's false, but it feels very true to me. If somebody comes to me with their conflict, there's really only two responses that person wants to hear. The first response is something like this: oh my goodness, I think I understand what you're feeling or experiencing. If what you're telling me, if I'm hearing it correctly, what I'm hearing is that you're feeling this and that and this. Am I getting that right? Right? That's the one response that I would say most of us hope to hear. But the second one, I don't believe, is a bad response either. And I think this is the only other response, unless I can think of something else. This right now, I'm holding to this. The other response is, you know what? I'm really sorry. I don't think I understand. Help me understand what you're meaning by what you're saying. I think you're saying this, but that makes me confused. Can you tell me more? So it's either I understand you, here's what I think I understand, is that right? Or, hey, I really don't understand, but I want to understand you, tell me more. So we can go into boundaries, we can go into leaning into the emotion. I'm kind of wide open. Scott?
I think we got to go into leaning into the emotion because we've started here.
Well, we've done that a lot, and we can do both, but let's go wherever. So this is what I have for my teaching piece today. I'm ready for questions if anybody wants to jump on the Q&A. Or
Cool.
Scott, you usually start poking me, which is great.
Yeah. So type stuff into Q&A, anything to do with relationships, prodependence, codependence, boundaries, leaning into conflict. So you said leaning into your partner's conflict or your
Right. So
partner's
they're
trauma.
they're coming to me, they're coming to me, and you say your partner. The truth is this works for every relationship. You could come to me, Scott, and say, hey, Matt, I've got this issue. And again, I'm sitting there listening to you and I'm trying to figure out what are you thinking and feeling? How can I mirror that back to you in a way and ask you if I'm getting it right? And if I can sit with you in that, I'm going to let you figure out how to help me show up for you rather than me go, oh crap, I've got to make Scott happy. He's upset with me, and like I'm really nervous because I love him, and so then I'm like desperately trying to calm you down, which is the worst thing I can do, right?
Yeah.
Instead, I'm going to go to where you're at and try to sit in that with you to help you find resolution.
Okay. So I'm a guy and I want to resolve everything because I'm a guy. I just want to leap from, A to Z, and skip all the steps in between. You say, we need to figure out who's going to pick up the kids from school. And I just want to say, here's how we're going to do it because that's what I do. Um, but what I should say is, I understand you're concerned about how we split up the duties of picking up the kids from school. Am I hearing you correctly?
Well, yeah, you could say that. If I'm understanding you, you're really frustrated about the current arrangement with picking up the kids from school. Am I
Yeah.
getting that correct? Right. So you could just go there. We haven't even gotten into the emotion very deeply, except that you're upset. And
And it's
before
probably going to be something more important than, whose day is it to pick up the kids from school, but it could be something that simple.
no, that's the wildest thing about relationships is that often I don't think it is more important than that. Because everything we fight about in our relationships are just content. The emotions or the experience underneath is what actually matters. And so for some weird reason, and it's not weird, it's what brings it out in us, right? We want to talk about, who didn't take out the trash, or whose day it is to pick up the kids, or how unappreciated I feel because you don't realize how busy I am at work and you want me to come pick up kids, like.
And actually, what you just said is, I think if I did this right and said, I understand that you want to talk about this, and you could say, yes, I'm feeling unappreciated because I seem to do this 4 days a week and you do it once.
Right. And it
Or
feels like, I'm just going to roll with your scenario. It feels like to me that you think my work is less valuable than yours because you want me to interrupt my work 4 days a week, and you only interrupt yours 1 day a week. It feels like you don't appreciate what I do for the family.
so this is now a much bigger issue than picking up the kids from school.
It always was.
Okay. All right.
Right. But we make it about that thing.
Yeah.
It's and so if we so how do you, all right, Scott, try it. How do you lean into that?
Well, as a defensive addict person, my
No.
response is, I make more money than you. So I'm contributing to the household and you don't appreciate that. But
Wow.
the proper answer is,
Can you add some type of chauvinism, male
yeah,
dominance in
yeah,
there?
yeah. Men don't do it. This is women, whatever. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh,
that'll get my head chopped off. So what I really do is, I need to say, I hear you and I want you to understand I really do value your work and your need to be at work. And sometimes I probably do place my own work ahead of yours. And I'm willing to work out a schedule and stick to it.
so maybe, right? There, at first I was like, you're going the wrong direction. And then you had one piece in there that I really liked, but here's the so I've got to remember, you started out saying, oh gosh, I can't rewind this until we put it on YouTube later. But basically, it was the piece in there about understanding I need to recognize more value in what you do or whatever. But I don't know I would go there. Like, that's the place we want to go to try and satiate our partner, to calm them. Now, think about it from a second. We're doing that because we love them. And hopefully it's because we believe that. And we're going, oh my gosh, I don't mean to be stepping on these toes of yours. Let me jump in really quick and tell you, let me reassure you that I don't feel that way. But usually it's not even about that. Like, meaning it's even better if we say, wow, so you're feeling really unappreciated lately. How often do you feel unappreciated about work? How often does it feel like my work's more important than yours? So now let's have a conversation about that. So I'm not even going to get in to try and reassure my partner. I'm going to try and lean in first to say, tell me more. Give me more information, and what else are you holding on to? Now, one thing that people will say to me when they're first learning this is, I don't know how to not sound like Matt, right? And their spouses will even say, stop, you sound like Matt. Stop talking like Matt, right? And my response there is, yeah, it probably sounds difficult as I learn this skill set. This is a brand new skill set for me. And I realize in the past, I've been too quick to rush in with a solution. And in the meantime, I probably do sound a little robotic. I probably do sound a little fake, but my intention is real. I actually do want to learn to do this different. And I wonder if I'm better at doing this, if you would actually feel more appreciated.
And by the way, that was our first question. So how do you do this without it seeming fake?
I actually had already read the first question, so I led that.
Yeah, put more questions in. We'll get to them.
So does that?
This is hard.
No, it's so hard. It's so hard. And I've actually told people that when I was really learning to do this, the hardest person in the world for me to do this with was my sweet wife, who everybody meets her. She's super sweet, not aggressive. In fact, I'm definitely the pursuer in the relationship, like in that regard. And yet she's the scariest person. I'm sorry. The next question really made me laugh. She's the she's the scariest person in the world because she's the person I'm most afraid to lose.
Matt has had a lot of caffeine this afternoon.
No, I actually
that was the next question.
I haven't had any caffeine. I actually love getting on here and talking about this. And there's a part of me that says, are we going to get any questions? But the interesting thing about it is that when I was learning to do this with my wife, I realized how much I'd get caught up in my fear of not wanting to hurt her, not wanting to disappoint her, wanting to calm her if she's in a moment of conflict, right? And realizing how much of me was getting in the way. So learning how to pause and slow down. And you guys will see this when you ask a question. I'm often really trying to ponder and figure out what's my most genuine response to this. Why am I responding the way I'm responding? And I will tell people, figure out what you're responding to before you respond. Because we're too quick to try and give some quick response. And it comes from a place of love. And I guess what I'm throwing out to you, your response was great. I could tell in your response that you genuinely care. The problem is, unless we dig in to understand why this is coming up for the other person, we're going to keep having this argument over and over every couple of weeks or months or days, depending on what the issue is.
So I'm going to be the guy again who wants a solution, who just wants to know which days you need me to pick the kids up. I mean, that's my natural tendency is to address what you tell me the problem is. And you're telling me I have to look for the problem under the problem.
Right, because the issue is that if you just make it about what days you're picking up, one, your work schedule might actually not be the best one in order to pick the kids up. So then you, rather than working on problem solving and helping your partner feel more appreciated, right? And are there other places where I could show up for you that would help you feel more appreciated? Because this one isn't working for me, which is fine. But instead, you're the guy, just tell me what you want me to do. I'm irritated and frustrated now as the guy because now I don't feel like I'm appreciated or understood, and my work schedule really isn't flexible here, and this is really putting me out. But because I'm the betrayer and I've screwed up, then let me just suck it up and not have a voice. And now I'm resenting you,
Yeah.
and I'm resenting the fact that I put us in this situation. I don't know how many guys out there I'm resonating with at the moment.
You're resonating with me for sure. I mean, I kind of feel like that, I hear that you're feeling unappreciated. Can you tell me more about that? I'm just asking you to tell me everything else you hate about me at this particular moment.
Oh, that's a fascinating angle that I want
I'm
to
like,
get to.
I'm not sure I want to go there.
Okay. Now the coolest part is that you can actually say, that. I would try and frame it a little different, but
Yeah.
again, I don't want to tell you guys to say this perfectly, because that's the problem. Sometimes we start getting in our head and we start trying to say everything perfectly. But I actually think that's a beautiful thing to say. Hey, you know what? I actually want to know more, but I'm a little bit scared that I'm just going to start feeling criticized. Well, then I'm being honest about what blocks me from normally going deeper with you, is that I'm actually scared of criticism. And so it would be more honest for you to say, I'd love to go deeper, but I'm afraid that we're going to start talking about all the things that you don't like about me, which, be careful, that might not be what he or she is saying at all.
Right.
I'm just feeling unappreciated and want to feel more appreciated.
So at
Right?
some point, though, do I ever get to the point where I say, what can I do to help you feel more appreciated and to also resolve the problem of picking the kids up from school? When do we get to that?
I think that's another wonderful question that you may not love my answer,
Okay.
but I think that gets to a place where we typically say to our partner, okay, do you feel like I'm understanding everything now? And now that I've asked you all of these questions, I can't think of any other questions to ask. Is there anything else I don't understand? And if they're like, no, okay, so how does it feel now that you feel like I understand? Well, it actually feels really good. Awesome. Can we talk about some possibilities? Here's my concern about the kid schedule thing. Fridays are no big deal. I can pick up the kids every Friday. That doesn't bother me. And it actually works well with my schedule and I enjoy it. Or it works well enough with my schedule and I can make it happen. I'm really nervous about Monday through Thursday. I don't think it's going to work for me. Is there something else we can do that would help you feel more appreciated? Like, you know what? I know sometimes you're getting the kids off to school. I think I'd be able to stay a little later in the morning, another half hour. I could help get the kids off. Can I pack lunches the night before? Like, I'm just making it up for a second, right? Let's talk about some things that would help you feel more appreciated that I can do. But I don't want to take the route of let me just solve your problem, take it in the chin because I'm the addict who screwed everything up. And this can go either way, by the way. It doesn't need to be addict and partner type of thing. But it's like once we feel heard, once we get to a place where I think I understand, am I missing anything? And they're like, no. Well, how's this feel? It actually feels really good. Thank you for listening. Okay, are you up for exploring things that might help you? Now, we also have to understand that they say, yes, help get the kids off to school or pack lunches. And they still, after a couple weeks, may not feel appreciated. Okay, so it wasn't the need for packing lunches. It wasn't for getting the kids off. Talk to me more about where the lack of appreciation is coming up.
Yeah.
Not, you know what? I can never do anything right. I try everything and I'm never going to be good enough. Okay, now we're making it about me.
Well, yeah, it's all about me, right?
Yeah.
I thank you for indulging me. I mean, and walking through that, because my natural tendency is to not do what you're suggesting. My
No,
natural tendency is to do the opposite. Let's just fix the problem and move on and never discuss it again.
and this is why people see me over and over and tell me how frustrating this experience is, because somewhere along the line, I think human behavior naturally taught us to do this. And in a relationship perspective, it is like, I don't want to say it's the least effective thing we could do, right? There's more painful things we could do, but it's pretty ineffective. Just trying to problem solve and make it go away is like telling the person, let's fix this so you can stop annoying me.
I've been watching my parents do this for 55 years.
Well, and you wonder where you learned this.
Yeah, yeah, okay. All right, let's get to the questions here. I am the betrayer in my relationship. I'm learning how to do this rather than trying to fix something that I don't understand. Good for you. When it relates to children and their trauma, do you have suggestions on how to do this effectively? Okay, so when you got the kids and they're traumatized.
Um, I think this relates in the same way, in that you're leaning into and you're trying to explore and draw out as much of their emotions as possible. That is so helpful for somebody who's been traumatized, even if we are the ones that traumatize them. In fact, sometimes if we're the one that traumatized them, that can be incredibly helpful because we're now showing up for them in a way that we couldn't before. So, just to speak to that, um, but what makes it different than with a partner is that you're exploring and then when you get to a place where they feel like they're understood to the best of their ability, because you got to understand that a child, and I'm going to assume here that we're talking under the age of 26, because brain development occurs, brain the forming growth occurs until age roughly 26, at least what we currently know. And then, so prior to that, in some sense, they're in some sort of adolescent growth period. And so their self awareness is going to be less than talking with like an adult child. And I feel like I've had a small tangent, but when we lean it, so we might need to help our child understand more fully. Hey, it really sounds like you're feeling betrayed. Is that what you're feeling? It sounds like you're feeling sad. Is that what you're feeling? Because a lot of times they have this emotion that they can't identify, they can't name. They need a lot more help usually than our partner does to name and identify where they feel feelings in the body. They need a lot more ideas of here's all the possibilities. Once they feel understood, we might ask them, what do you need? How can we solve this together? And they're clueless. They don't know because maybe you're teaching them for the first time they're allowed to have needs. And so that's where we say, hey, something that's really helped me is this. Are you open for this? And it could say, you know what, after having a conversation like this, one thing that's really helped me is a hug. Do you think a really big hug would help? I'm happy to give you a hug. And they might say, no, I don't want that. Okay. Do you just need some time to think about it? Yeah, I think I need some time. Okay. Yeah. When you're ready to revisit it, come back and let's talk. And so you're leaning into it, but you're exploring a bit more, and you're also telling them, I don't expect you to know how to do this. This is all very brand new, and I'm really proud of you for just opening up. So with your kids, you're in essence more patient and understanding that you're introducing them to things that you wish you would have been introduced to a long time ago. And you're teaching them skill sets that you're learning for the first time yourself. So I hope that answers that question, unless I'm.
I think it's a great answer, but let me ask you this follow up. Um, when a kid doesn't get that from a parent. When I was a kid, I wasn't allowed to have feelings or needs, and I was chastised for having them or teased for having them. Oh, you're so sensitive, and
Yeah.
nothing ever got talked about or dealt with. What does that do to the child, and what can that child do when I'm asking for myself? What can I do now to get over this and learn how to
Okay,
do
so
this?
you're asking, so I'm going to reframe what you just took and make it applicable to the question, because now you're asking, how does an adult heal those wounds?
Yeah.
And let's use this question. If I have previously ridiculed my child, if I have previously dismissed my child, if I have previously told my child that they shouldn't feel this way, well, then as an adult, I'm going to try and honor those. Hey, I know that it's probably scary to open up to me about this. I've dismissed you in the past. I've told you you're too sensitive in the past. You didn't deserve for me to treat you that way, and I've probably caused you some harm because of that. And I'm really sorry. Now, it depends on how old the kid is, right? I don't know that I would say that to a young kid, but maybe like a teenager who's gaining this self-awareness. To a young kid, I would say, you know what? It would probably be more something along the lines of, hey, unfortunately, I didn't understand how to sit with you and your emotions, and so I'm so glad you're telling me about them now. Why don't you tell me more? Or when you're ready to talk about it, come back, because I'm really proud of you for telling me, right? You don't want to introduce necessarily to your child that, hey, I harmed you in the past, but if they're an older, like teenager, you can say that and they get it. Like, hey, this is how relationships work.
And
Um,
kind of what you just suggested, saying would also work with the partner. I'm really glad you're telling me how you feel. I have trouble hearing it sometimes, but I appreciate you doing it, and I'm going to work on hearing it now.
And sometimes the best answer is, I'm working on hearing it now. Thank you so much for telling me. I'm going to need to think about this and come back to you later, and then come back later and say, hey, I think if I'm understanding it, here's what was going on. Here's what I would have needed. If it takes you time to come back and then validate, go for it. And that can be incredibly healing, because then you're holding space and saying, I hear you, but I also realize I'm still learning.
Okay. All right. Because yeah, this it just feels like a huge learning process. Um, I always learn on these
There's no
sessions.
wrong way, as long as you stay present in their emotion and present in your emotion. And if I'm present in my emotion and my response is, thank you so much for telling me, I'm going to need to think about this because I can tell what you've said is really important. And then I say, I need to end the conversation and I'm going to have to think about it. Let's revisit, right? Even that is more than you've probably ever done. So just be okay with that and know that that probably feels pretty good.
Okay, so I'm going to ask one more follow-up, and then I promise I'm done, and I'll get to the questions that people have typed in. Um, you said, as long as I'm present with your emotion and with my emotion, there's no wrong answer. But what if I've never been allowed to be present with my emotions? I guess that's kind of what I was asking earlier. I mean, it's very hard for somebody who had a childhood like mine to be present
Right.
with emotions, even now, after a whole bunch of work.
Right.
Um,
So then you say that to them. I'm struggling to be present with my own emotions. And you deserve for me to hear you. So I'm going to take this and think about it and work through my emotions and come back. So you stay present with that. If that's where you're at, vocalize it without blaming them, and just say, you know what, I'm having a hard time staying present with this. Let me think about it and I'm going to come back.
Yeah, because this has nothing to do with them. It is me that can't stay present with emotions.
Right. And
Okay,
if you can
that I
say
like.
that, say it.
That I
That's
can do.
incredibly beautiful.
Okay, so, but I still, my natural tendency is I still want to fix it. I'm going to have to unlearn that. I'm going to work on this.
But that, again, if that's the first thing that comes up for you, say that out loud. Hey, you just told me this thing, and my natural tendency is to try and fix it. which would probably make you feel like I'm telling you you're wrong. And so let me sit with this, or tell me more. Like, you can vocalize that that's what's happening. And I'm going to tell you straight up, there is not a betrayed partner on the planet, at least in my opinion, who, if you said, I'm having a hard time staying present, and what I want to do is to fix this, that wouldn't go, at least to some degree, hallelujah, you finally realize that you do this thing.
Yeah. Okay. All
Right? Like, that would, like, I can't tell you, betrayed partners validate me here, because if they owned that they're trying to fix it, you'd probably be like, oh, we have a breakthrough. And if that's as much as you can do, oh my gosh, I'll take that breakthrough.
Okay. All right.
Does that seem odd that I say that?
No, as a matter of fact, it's just, as an addict, I will play the whole conversation out in my head, and that's not how it goes. Like, I tell the truth about I'm having trouble staying present, and I say, well, and then I get chastised or whatever, because that's what happened 50 years ago.
Well, and it might be what a betrayed partner does, because that's what they learned 50 years ago. I mean, now at the same time, it doesn't mean it's not the right move. You have to still hold your space and say, I just need to own that this is as deep as I can go right now, and I'm going to have to revisit it later.
Yeah. And you just got a validation from a betrayed partner on.
Yes.
Like, yeah, that would be a big breakthrough. Okay, let's go to questions. I learned my partner is a sex addict about 1 month ago. Sexual scenes on TV make me very uncomfortable, which I tried to talk about. That didn't go so well. Are there ways we can find a way to address these very sensitive topics as we each go through counseling and recovery? I think that's a great question. I think a lot of betrayed partners get triggered by things that are not triggering to the addict, but they still feel triggered by it, like a sex scene on TV. I understand why the betrayed partner's getting triggered from a distance, but as an addict, I would be like, it's not doing anything for me.
Right.
So, great question.
It could be doing something for me. It doesn't do anything for me. I mean, you have a whole gamut of possibility there. Are there ways we can find a way to address these very sensitive topics? So that's a great question. I think it's really important as a betrayed partner not to try and prevent every possibility of triggers. Like, if you watch a certain show and it's like, oh my gosh, this show is bringing up way too many triggers every time we watch it, it isn't worth it, then you might want to say, hey, you know what? I think we need to shelf this show. Let's find something else to watch together. This is just too painful. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But the idea of, okay, we're never going to watch something on TV, and we're never going to go to the movies, and we're never going to go out in public. I mean, that's where it's like, okay, we're getting a little unhealthy here. And so, but talking about the different times where you do have escalated emotions come up and what's causing the escalation, I think is exactly what you need to do. But you say any way to address these sensitive topics, I think you need to probably start with why those topics feel so sensitive, right? And so it might look like, and this is that slicing it thinner piece, it might look like, hey, there's some topics I want to bring up, but I'm scared to, because it feels like anytime I bring up one of these sensitive topics, it ends up in a fight. And I don't like being in a fight with you. So I stuff down a lot of my emotions, or I stuff down a lot of these sensitive moments and try to deal with it alone, because I would rather keep the connection we have. Now, your partner might be inclined to say, well, what is it? What are those moments? Tell me. And it's like, no, let's talk about how often these sensitive topics are coming up and I'm stuffing them down. That's the more important thing to talk about, right? How often I don't open up, how often I sit with these things alone. And really, if you hear the attachment bid, that is there, I love you so much that I'm trying to do this alone because I want to try and stay connected. Well, that's a beautiful thing that's very unhealthy, right? Um, we don't want to stuff that down, and we want to just start talking about how frequently I'm wanting to connect.
So my response is, as the partner, instead of saying, why are you so upset about this, is because that's my first response. First thought wrong, wait for the next bus. Is I hear that you are stuffing emotions because you're afraid that we'll get into a fight. And I understand that. I do that myself sometimes. I'd like to know more about which emotions you're stuffing and when it happens, and maybe we can find a way to work through them without fighting. Is that a proper response?
No, like I think that is a good response, but you may also consider looking for the attachment bid that's there. And when the partner was saying, I really want to be close to you and I stuff this down because I don't want to disconnect from you, it's recognizing, hey, another question is, how often do you do things that are to your detriment in an attempt to like love me, in an attempt to keep us together? That's got to be a pretty heavy burden, right?
Your
Like,
answer sounds way better than mine.
no,
I'd
but
much rather hear your answer than mine.
well, right, because you're looking and realizing that all of the issues we run into are about an attachment bid deep down underneath. And so we don't want to make it about whatever the content is on the surface. Right? So I'm trying to figure out what you're doing that doesn't make any sense to me, how it makes sense to you, and how it's a sign that you love me. Right? So if you're criticizing me all the time and I'm noticing that you're criticizing me and you're telling me how terrible I am at this thing, I'm trying to go, okay, so you're criticizing me because you want me to fix this, because you want a healthy, happy relationship. This goes back to that gracious assumption subject we've talked about many times. So now I'm going to try and lean into that and go, okay, I feel criticized right now, but it sounds like you're doing it because you want me to change this so that we can have a healthy, happy relationship. I'm grateful you love me so much that you keep revisiting this instead of just quitting. But maybe we need to look at a different way of going about this, because when I feel criticized, I just keep shutting down.
Okay.
Sorry, was that way too?
Yeah, no, that's great. I want to go back to this question though and address it. I want to talk to the addicts who are listening right now, because I've worked with addicts who have this. 9 times out of 10, it's a restaurant, and the wife thinks that the addict is flirting with the waitress, and the addict says, "But I'm not," and I'm just being nice, and I have to say, okay, you're not, but look at it through her lens. Start looking at these things through her lens, because you have betrayed her and you've caused some pain, and you need to see it the way she sees it. So, given that, and of course,
Yeah,
me wanting to
yeah,
solve the problem,
don't bother arguing whether you are or not. You
right?
can say as part of the conversation, you know what, I'm not, but it makes sense why that would bother you. And
Yeah,
I'm actually glad that it would bother you. That means
that you care
that,
about me.
that you care about me, that you don't want to lose me to my unhealthy behaviors. And so I'm going to lean in and validate that although you telling me I'm flirting with the waitress maybe isn't the healthiest response, it's in the Prodependence perspective out of love for me,
Yeah, and
right?
I think the big thing is remembering the desire for healthy attachment.
Correct.
So
which leads me
that's under all of this.
which which leads me to the next question, which says, how do you effectively end these types of conversations? I'm going to read this. I'm doing your job today, Scott.
Go for it.
Most times there isn't an immediate resolution and feels unresolved. How do you lean in, try and understand, and then get to a point on how to move forward, since these types of issues cannot be fixed immediately? And my challenge to you is, you don't want to end these types of conversations, because I want you to know that anytime you feel scared or worried or nervous or unappreciated, that I'm here, that we can talk. And so the truth is, learn to be comfortable. And I mean this and I don't mean this. Learn to be comfortable if there's a lack of resolution. Learn to gain the emotional tolerance that we're going to be okay if we have something unresolved. We'll figure it out together. And maybe me picking up the kids one more day a week is helpful. Maybe it's not. Maybe me getting the kids off to school is helpful. Maybe it's not. And so I'm comfortable going on this journey with you. And so let's try some things. But I don't have the end in mind already figured out. I don't have the story in my head. Okay, fine. I'm going to help get the kids off, but this better be enough. Otherwise, I'm going to be super mad that I keep doing these things for you and nothing ever helps you heal. And it's like, actually, I know that this may not help you heal, and I'm okay with that, because I'm on the road with you. I'm on the journey with you. And the journey isn't about fixing everything. It's about being okay that some things aren't fixed, and that we're going to figure it out, and hopefully it resolves itself. And if it keeps coming up, we'll be okay. Let's talk about it. Does this
Right.
feel like the most ambiguous, ugly thing I could have said to anybody, or does this actually make sense?
It makes sense. I mean, I always hear be comfortable with your discomfort, which makes me uncomfortable. But I get what that means. But we've also talked about boundaries. So let's go back to the TV question.
Uh-huh.
She can she set a boundary about this particular TV show or just general sex scenes on TV?
She can do
Um,
whatever she needs or wants to do.
and and so let's say initially she brings up, this makes me uncomfortable. I'm going to be the betrayed partner. I'm going to let you be the well-informed cheating spouse who knows what to say.
Maybe we should change this to Scott and Matt acts out
Yeah,
on or dramatizes your relational issues
yeah.
webinar.
We're gonna improv your relationship. Okay.
No,
So
I actually don't think this is bad. I think this is great. So go ahead.
yeah. So we're watching Game of Thrones, okay, which is just porn with dragons. Um, so we're watching Game of Thrones, and I turn to you and I say, Matt, this show, there's a lot of nudity in this show. It really makes me uncomfortable, and with your addiction, I'm worried that it might be bad for you and bad for our relationship, but really it just makes me uncomfortable. I don't want to watch this.
Right. Which if a betrayed partner was feeling escalated emotions and said it that eloquently,
Okay.
I would be shocked. But looking at the root of the issue there, which is, you know what, I can't do this. This show is driving me crazy, and I mean, I'm just worried that you're going to be an addict forever. Right?
Yeah. I'm worried that when I go to sleep tonight, you're going to act out.
Oh, totally. Right. I'm worried that I can't trust you. And to the betrayed partner, there's a million things like that going through their head, and they don't even know all of it, because it's getting like unpacked like with a stick of dynamite, right? And and so I'm trying to figure out what your question is ideally what would the person struggling with addiction, how would they respond?
Well, yeah, I mean, as a betrayed partner, I want this show to never be watched again by you and me.
Right.
Um,
and we could discuss that, right? We might need to say, you know what? Yeah, unfortunately, we might not be able to watch this. And
But I
she
have
can,
a lot of fears and all that stuff under it. I'm afraid that this is
Mhm.
gonna trigger you to cheat on me again, and that you're gonna start looking at porn, and then when I go to sleep, you're gonna text your secretary, and then you're gonna disappear at 2 a.m. and sneak back in at 3 a.m. and and the whole neighborhood knows about this.
Correct. Right. And ultimately it's, hey, one, I want to validate your fear. I don't blame you for feeling that way with all the unhealthy things that have gone on in the relationship and the mistakes that I've made. It would make sense. This stuff's going to come up. So would turning it off right now be helpful, or would something else be helpful? Should we just not watch TV together, or right? Like, I can explore those boundaries with the betrayed partner in that moment, but I want to be careful. Like, I don't want to go into a fix it mode, right?
Right, and
Now,
I was just about to, in my betrayed partner feelings right now. I'm kind of in the role, and I'm like, no, turning the TV off isn't going to help.
right.
Yeah,
So
no, not watching TV together isn't going to help, because that's
e-
not what this is about.
exactly. So you know what? Let's pause this and tell me what this is about. Tell me why this brings this up for you. How often does this come up? How often do you not tell me? How often do you want to control my recovery when this happens? And right, like it's like, tell me more about this. And what do you think might be helpful for you? What would be helpful to hear from me that maybe I'm not thinking about? Is there something that we can address that I'm not paying attention to? What am I missing?
And I'm finding myself in betrayed partner mode, wanting to formulate responses.
So formulate them and let's go there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't trust you. Um,
I I don't blame you.
you cheated on me. I don't trust you. And here we are watching this show that makes me uncomfortable, but you say it doesn't make you uncomfortable. And I think you're just desensitized to this, and you don't even know the difference between right and wrong right now.
And that could be true. And I think that's something that is a reasonable thing for somebody to be worried about. I could tell you where I'm at. I could tell you what I've been doing in my recovery around this in particularly. We could
And
talk
about this
about,
point, I want to scream at you and say, stop being so reasonable. I want to fight.
right. And so tell me more about that. Why do you want to fight? How often do you want to fight and you don't get the opportunity?
Yeah. Yeah. And now I feel like you're defusing me by asking me, when I tell you I want to fight, I want you to fight with me. And
Yeah.
you're asking me
And
questions.
what does fighting with you give me? Because I mean, sometimes if I have someone fight with me, at least I feel like they're fighting for us. And so
Yeah.
if that's what you're going for, I want you to know that I am fighting for the relationship, and I'm fighting for the relationship with my recovery. But I don't know that I want to get in a fight with you because I care too much about you.
Oh, you are so evolved. We can never be in a relationship.
I realize this is like next level, like, and why? Because not only have I studied how to do this and read books, but I've practiced this. I practice this with my kids. I practice this with my wife. And sometimes I suck at it. Sometimes my kids will tell you, oh, in fact, my kids are not afraid to tell me, hey, Dad, you blew it yesterday. And
Yeah.
I'm like, you're right. I did, didn't I? Let's talk about that. In fact, I can think of a really good scenario where my wife was like, hey, as one of my kids stormed out of the room, my wife's like, oh, wow, you blew that one. And I was like, what? What do you, what? And then I was like, oh, yeah, no, I totally did, didn't I? Right? Like, this is higher level stuff, but you know, there's the part of me that says, so what? I don't teach you guys, right? Like, I want you desperately to learn this because it changes all of your relationships. It changes all of your conflicts. You'll see people at work. You'll resolve conflict and have better connection with them, better healthy work connection with them, right? Like, you'll see this everywhere. You can resolve conflict at any point and have a healthier connection with any other human being.
this leaning into the pain and the trauma and the conflict is just like, I think, the hardest thing we've talked about in
leaning
any of our
into
sessions.
and leaning into theirs. And if you
Yeah.
feel yours coming up and you can't go any closer, you identify, hey, I can't lean in any further because I'm overwhelmed, because this is what's coming up for me. So unless you're in a space where you can lean in for me, which sucks because I can't tell you how many times a betrayed partner is like, okay, here we go, making it all about you. But the truth is, in that moment, I am stuck, and I'm in my emotion and I can't get to yours because I'm stuck in mine. And until I figure out how to resolve that, either with you or with somebody else, I can't lean back in. Now, I teach my people struggling with addiction that you have to learn to put that to the side and lean in, but that takes a certain amount of recovery. That's hard to do.
Okay. Let's get to this last question here. I'm the betrayed partner. How can I respond to the eye roll and the, oh God, not again? What is wrong with you now? Which is what I would get from my husband if I said something about a TV show.
Oh, totally. And you know what? It's the hardest thing because I'm like, yeah, unfortunately, that's where your husband is in that at that part in recovery. Um, I would probably respond by saying, let's see, how would I respond? I mean, if we're talking about a perfect world, I would respond by saying, okay, what do I have to work with here? I can't keep watching this television show. So I'm going to say, you know what? Unfortunately, with the response I just got, I'm not sure I can keep watching. I'd love to talk to you more about my pain, but it seems like you're not in a place where you're able to sit with me in it. So now I have to lean into myself and figure out, what do I need? And so if I'm in a rough place and I just got an eye roll, I might need to call up a friend and be like, hey, I just got the eye roll. I was trying to be vulnerable with my husband and I didn't get what I needed. And so can you show up for me right now so that I can de-escalate myself a little bit and see if I can either lean back in with my husband or get my resolution with you, and then hope my husband figures out recovery in this process, because otherwise it's going to be a very uh, cardboard marriage.
Yeah. And,
Sorry.
and the betrayed partner may go back and set a boundary, just set a boundary.
Right. The
At this
betrayed
point,
partner at
rather
that
than
point
trying
has
to
to
have the
figure,
conversation.
the boundary might be, hey, I'm done watching TV for the night. And the boundary might be, hey, we can't watch this TV show together from here on out. We can only watch Disney cartoons together. I'm just making this up, right? The boundary might literally be any of those things, because if I get escalated and I tell my partner, they're going to give me eye rolls. Well, I'm going to have that conversation at some point. Hey, I'm struggling to watch anything that might bring up emotional response from me with you. I'm struggling to watch anything with you that might bring up an emotional response because I'm scared of the eye roll. The eye roll to me means I don't matter and that something's wrong with me. Can we talk about that feeling and how much that comes up for me, and maybe I can help you show up for me in a certain way?
Yeah. And this kind of brings us, we've got one more question here, to kind of this from the other side. At what point is leaning into their pain and suppressing your own feelings to do it? I'm fearful that I'll get to a point where I will boil over and blow up. So this is somebody who's leaning in, but is kind
Right.
of pushing their own feelings down to do it.
Well, so this is a great question, because what I want to say is the person who brings the vulnerability to the conversation, the person who brings the conflict to the conversation, is the one who we're actively working on resolving the conflict with. So too many times a spouse will bring the conflict and then the other person's like, oh yeah, let me tell you about my conflict. When are we going to talk about me? And it's like, sorry, that doesn't work. If I'm being vulnerable and bringing the conflict, we're going to work on that conflict. So you talk about suppressing your own feelings, and it's, well, one, my first challenge to you is, how often are you taking your feelings or your conflict to the conversation? And if you're never taking it to the conversation, but you're frustrated that your partner's always the one bringing it up, well, then I hate to say it, you're boiling over because you're not getting vulnerable, right? So don't suppress your feelings. Stop suppressing your feelings, but bring it up the next day. Hey, when we were having that conversation yesterday, I noticed that this was coming up for me. Can you help me resolve this? So now here's me bringing the conflict so that we can resolve, so that we can be closer together. So don't ever suppress your feelings, but don't bring them up as part of distracting or dismissing the conversation, because now suddenly yours are bigger and badder and boiling over. Don't let yours boil over. Bring it the next day. Bring it 2 days later. Hey, can I bring up something? And watch your betrayed partner, if that's the case, or any partner for that matter, fall over on the floor and go, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? You actually want to talk about a conflict? Let's do this. Yay! Or they're going to be like, oh yeah, you're not allowed to have feelings and emotions. I'm the only one that's allowed to be. And then we can go there, right? You can have a whole myriad of responses, and you may have learned to suppress because your feelings are never appreciated or whatever. I don't know. We're going to have to go there when you come back next session, not session, webinar, because this is education only.
Yeah.
I think I'm being funny. So yeah, you bring that back next time and we can totally talk about where does it go next, but don't suppress it. That's not healthy for you. That's not healthy for the relationship. Don't bring it up as a weapon.
Yeah, and I think the last thing, because we got to end here, but I want to say, and maybe you can comment a little on this, Matt, is we don't tend to have conflict with people we don't care about. So if my partner and I are in conflict, it's a sign that we actually care about each other.
Right.
So any thoughts on that, or just
Well, that's actually what I was trying to say earlier, was if we start to notice the attachment bid, right? If we start to recognize conflict as, and I've talked about this before, how many of us, when a baby cries, we're like, oh shoot, let me get over there and help them. Let me try and resolve the conflict because I love and care about this little baby, right? And then they become teenagers and we're like, oh great, this conflict you're bringing up and telling me that I'm a terrible parent, right? Right. It's realizing that whether we're a baby crying or we're a 50-year-old man or woman saying this TV show is hurting me, it's not about the TV show. It's not about being hungry. It's about our partner or this person saying, I need your help receiving comfort. Will you show up for me so that we can have a more trusting, loving relationship? That mind shift is a difficult process, especially for those of us who were taught we got to do life alone.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. What a cool topic. Another one we can revisit later, I think.
Not quite as fun as boundaries last time, though, huh?
Boundaries was really fun, but this was a cool topic, and yeah, a difficult one. So thank you everybody for being here. Thank you, Matt, for donating your time and intellect and sense of humor and bubbling personality and over-caffeinated self to help people.
No problem.
We'll be back in 2 weeks. Please join us. There was a question at the end that we didn't get to. Bring it back in 2 weeks. We'll be happy to answer it. And we will see you then.
See you guys. Thank you.
Have a good weekend, everybody.